Yeah, he flew out there, and I thought I had, like, convinced him to, like, try to make peace with her. And I was like, if you guys work on this, like, I'm out. Because what's the point? Like, I'm not trying to be with somebody that's in another relationship, which I know that sounds silly given the whole relationship that we had in the first place, but I really was under the impression that they were separating.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. Nicole Kessinger claimed she was under the impression Watts was separating, present tense, from Shanann during their affair. Not that he was separated, but that he was separating. The other thing to note, and I'm not sure if I'm 100% on board with what she says when she says that she was encouraging him to make peace. The impression I get is that the idea was that they were going to separate peacefully. But the way that she says she will be out if they come back together again, I'm not sure if she was encouraging him to work on their marriage, especially since we know to what extent he was distracted when they were both together in North Carolina. And the role that she played, I guess, in distracting him. What I do want to focus on in this episode is whether it is true that Chris and Shanann were separating. And we tend to be dismissive and cynical of whatever Nicole Kessinger says about that. But what happens when you look at the rest of the context, what other people say about it? I mean, during the final weeks of the affair in July and August, that's Chris and Shanann Watts, they were literally separated for weeks at a time. And in the discovery, the word separate or separating comes up 107 times, and divorce or divorcing 36 times. These are a few of those instances. Text messages from Shanann Watts on August 5th, exactly a week before her death. She sent a message which was really a screenshot of a quote by Isaac Kuvoruna. Not quite sure how to say that, but it ends saying, "Therefore what God has joined together, let no mother, father, brother, sister, friend, or boss separate." Shanann Watts also sent a message to Nicole Atkinson and Cassie Rosenberg on August 8th. And in the message sent at 90 minutes past 10 at night, she told Nicole and Cassie, "I will fight for full custody." She also said that Watts told her he does not want to divorce right away. So as early as August 8th, certainly Shanann, Nicole, and Cassie knew that divorce was in the offing. Before we get to the rest of those instances and we get back to Nicole Kessinger's interview, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Like, share, leave a comment, and let's get started.
I really was under the impression that they were separating. I mean, it was like reiterated to me so many times that that's what I thought it was. And it made sense to me too because, like, he could pretty much call me whenever he wanted. Like, I was the one that would tell him, like, hey, when your kids are awake, you need to spend time with your kids. Like, do that. And then after they go to bed, like, if you want to talk to me, you can talk to me. But it was never like this super, super restricted thing. Like, sometimes, like, right after work, if I was, like, still talking to him, I'd get kind of bummed out. And I tell him, just like, oh, it's frustrating sometimes, like, having to, like, wait. But at the same time, I was never like, this is horrible, or, it was always like, I understood why. But then once his kids were asleep, he never, like, had any... It was like he could do what he wanted. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, sure. He was in his basement, and she's upstairs, and they're not speaking. So it kind of made sense. It wasn't like...
And you guys were just texting and...
Or talking or whatever, I mean, and it was like I said, it was at certain times, but that time, and originally it wasn't, but it was me that put that time frame on there because I thought he should hang out with his kids.
Those 2 times you were at his house, did you see any evidence of that? Him living in the basement? Did he ever show you that area or anything?
I've seen it, yeah. I went down there and saw his little workout equipment, and there's a bed down there all set up, and the basement was all clean and organized and stuff, so... like a decent bed set up, so it made sense to me, like, hey, this is what's happening down here. So I saw it.
Now, in terms of Chris Watts sleeping in the basement, I really don't think that happened more than once, maybe twice at the most. So that being emphasized, I don't know if that is really that pertinent. But in terms of those references in the discovery, let's just go through them. First of all, from Officer Scott Coonrod, who was the first officer on the scene, and this was his impression. Christopher stated that Shanann arrived home from a trip around about 0200 hours early on Monday morning. He was asleep at the time. He woke up around 0500 hours to get ready for work, and they began talking about them separating. Christopher stated it was a civil conversation and they were not arguing. They were emotional though. Christopher stated that they had been talking about separating for a few weeks. Then we go to Officer Matthew James, and this is from August 17th, where he says, quote, Chris said he has slept in the basement a few times because of the separation. He said it was probably Thursday night into Friday. So is that really once or twice? He advised the kids sleep in their own beds. Sergeant Bakes asked about the sheets in the master bedroom. Chris advised she usually jumps into bed after being in the airport and will wash the sheets the next day to get the airport off them. Chris advised he was in the master bedroom last night. Chris advised Shanann works at home in direct sales. So after sleeping in the basement, he apparently slept in the master bedroom when Shanann arrived home. Does that jive with you? Chris advised she doesn't go for walks. Chris advised this morning they had a conversation about selling the house and separating. Then we get another one, also from Officer James. Chris didn't want the baby Shanann was currently pregnant with, and he wanted, according to what Sam knew, he wanted a separation. Christina said when they were separated for 5 weeks, Chris came back to Shanann a different man. Then also from Officer Ed Goodman, Christina said when they were separated for 5 weeks, sorry, that's that one. Chris came back to Shanann a different man. Officer Kellen Hasenstab, Christopher had discussed separating from each other early that morning. Agent Stacey Galbraith, Chris told Nicole, that's Nicole Atkinson, that he and Shanann were getting separated and told her that Shanann was fine. He told Nicole to leave the house. He insisted they were getting separated and things were okay. Cassie told Chris to get his ass to the house. Chris called Cassie and it sounded like he was driving. Chris told Cassie not to call the police. He said he did not want the police involved. He told Cassie he was sure Shanann was fine. Cassie warned Chris that if he was not there in 30 minutes, she was calling the police. Cassie said that Shanann did not say there was any mention of her and Chris separating before she left for Arizona. They agreed to counseling while she was in Arizona. One of the texts Chris Watts sent to Cassie was, I told Nikki, meaning Nicole Atkinson, about it so she wouldn't freak out anymore at the house. I think Christina knows as well. We talked last night and I told her I wanted to sell the house, get something smaller. Separation would be best right now. Then there's another one from Shanann, from Josh Rosenberg, that is Cassie's husband, who understood that Chris wanted to separate and move on, and he said that he couldn't do this anymore. Another one is also from Josh. This is according to Stacey Galbraith. Josh knew from Cassie and Shanann that there were changes in Chris over the 4 to 5 weeks period to Shanann's Arizona trip. There was discussion about divorcing or separating. When Chris was in North Carolina with Shanann and the kids, Shanann had said he was cold, inattentive, and did not show love. It was not the Chris they knew. So in other words, in terms of Shanann herself, Chris Watts was playing this role of someone who was already separated, and Shanann was resisting that. Then there's another friend, it's Charlotte Nelson, who was also interviewed by Agent Stacey Galbraith, and she said she was asked if Kessinger spoke of the guy's marital status to Charlotte. Kessinger did not at the time, but Kessinger has since told Nelson that the guy had told Kessinger he was separated from his wife. That's past tense. Then there's also Karen. Karen said that it surprises her that Chris told her he wanted to separate the night she returned from the trip. I think she's right about that. Then from Agent Graham Coder, there's this talk about, so he says to Graham Coder, now he's moved the timeline back to 4:15. He says, that's when I get up, get back, slide right into bed next to her and started having conversation about the house, putting the house up for sale and talking about like actually proceeding with the separation. Coder says, okay. What says separation? And then they talk about your marriage and separation. And Coder asks, can you connect the dots between both of you being upset and crying, and here we are now, she and the kids are gone? What do you think about that? And Watts answers cagily, I think about that I caused this. Like, did I make her feel like she needed to leave? And like, did she really feel like the things she was saying? Did she really feel the same? Did she really feel like that this connection was broken? Then from Agent Tammy Lee, Watts explained, and I think this is prior to the lie detector, or anyway, during the statements that he made to her. Her understanding was that Detective Bormover had said Chris denied knowing where his wife and kids were located and explained that he and Shanann had been having marital issues. Chris said that he got up for work at 4 o'clock and talked to Shanann about wanting a separation. Then there's also what Agent Tammy Lee, when she interviewed Chris Watts' boss, and she said that she asked Epple to explain the conversation Chris had with him on August 7th. So that was about just less than a week before the murder. Epple said that Chris told him and his wife were having some issues that they were trying to work out. Epple said Chris did not tell him he and Shanann were separating, but warned Epple if he saw anything goofy on his geotab, that's his GPS log, that it was probably due to Chris staying at a friend's house. Epple said that Chris did not tell him the names of the friends he may be staying with. Epple said he told Chris to send him a text if he was ever going to stay anywhere but his residence. Epple said he never received a text from Chris stating he was staying anywhere else. Epple said that Chris had never mentioned any issues between him and his wife in the past. Then we go to CBI agent Matthew Saylor, and he says that a friend of Chris Watts, a guy called Jameson, said that he and Shanann were going, well, Chris Watts told this guy Jameson that he and Shanann were going to separate and get a divorce. He also spoke about his mother, that Cindy had contacted him, that's Chris Watts, and told him that Cindy had contacted Jameson and told him that Chris and Shanann were going to separate. Jameson said that Chris never specifically told him what was causing him to separate. From Detective Bormover, we get this understanding that, and I guess it's from Officer Coonrod, that there's the talk about marital separation early that morning. This is once again at the later timeline of 5 o'clock. And then he informed her he wanted to initiate the separation. So at this point, they are still separating. They're not separated. And it's quite interesting how that term is used sort of interchangeably depending on who you're speaking with. Then there's also Nicole Atkinson. She said that Shanann was, this is according to what Nicole told the detective. Nicole told the detective that Shanann was emotionally distraught about her relationship with Watts subsequent to their visit with family in North Carolina. According to Nicole, Shanann was looking for advice from other friends about how to fix their relationship. So why would Shanann be looking for advice if there wasn't something going on, and if there was something? I don't think it was quite a separation, but certainly it was the beginning phases of that, and Shanann was trying to prevent that from happening. But it is clear that Watts had spoken to Shanann, about separation, and Shanann had then conveyed this to others. Shanann told Nicole Atkinson she was shocked and didn't understand how it got to the point of separation, because everything seemed fine between them before she left for a trip to North Carolina. Then there's also this reference, and this is with the friend Amanda Thayer, also written down, recorded by Detective Bormover. Amanda said that Watts told her he was separated from his baby's mama and that she wouldn't let him see the kids, and that she could relate because her boys, that's Amanda Thayer's boys, were in Vermont with her ex-husband. And that's from Discovery page 1894. So, it seems when law enforcement mention the separation, it's credible and legitimate. When Shanann's friends mention it, it's fine. When family members mention it, it's okay. But when Kessinger mentions it, there's some sort of deceit or manipulation going on. And I think one's got to bear in mind that he definitely was making this ruse, making this scenario, and it was partially based on the truth. They were to some extent separated. He did want to separate from her, but officially was, practically speaking, was the separation actually taking place? On the one hand, you could argue because they weren't together in the same place, it was, but the proper way for it to take place is that Shanann consents to it and Shanann accepts it, and that wasn't the case. So, if you think about what is going on here, especially when you look at Nicole Kessinger, we have Chris Watts that tries to deceive everyone, but he couldn't have tried to deceive Nicole Kessinger. That's almost the impression one gets from all the chatter about her. So then the only possibility is that she deceived us. And that seems to be the line of thinking here. He didn't deceive his wife, the Lindstroms, or his mistress. She did. She's responsible for the deception. Then there's another reference here to separation, which comes from Kevin Kobach's notes. He said, and this is referencing what Nicole Atkinson told him. She said, he mentioned he did have a significant other, but they were in the process of a separation. She did not know Shanann's name for a while. She thought he told her his children's names pretty early. Now, I'm not going to go through the additional instances, except to say that many of the instances of the word separation come from Kessinger. And you can imagine anyone embroiled in an affair with someone who is married would want to know the status of that. Is it improving or is it getting worse? Where is that relationship going, and what bearing does it have on our relationship? What is interesting is Kessinger picking up on the night of August 13th that not only had Shanann left her wedding ring at the house, and she knew because he told her, and Watts also showed the ring to Nicole Atkinson and Officer Coonrod hours after the incident. But Kessinger remembered he'd said in North Carolina that he wanted the separation when previously he'd said that she wanted it. I'm just going to read that section from the Discovery. Nicole recalled another conversation on August 13, 2018. That was the Monday night. Chris Watts told Nicole Kessinger that Shanann had left her wedding ring at the house. Watts asked Nicole how much she thought the ring was worth. She responded by telling him to pawn it. He said he was going to get the ring appraised. Watts also mentioned North Carolina and that he wanted the separation, while previously he'd said that Shanann wanted the separation. This seemed to sort of set alarm bells in Kessinger's mind. During the prelude to the polygraph, Watts said he realized he wanted to separate from Shanann during the 5 weeks when they were already separated. Yes, that sounds fair, but did he tell her this? Did he tell Shanann this while they were separated? And if not, if he didn't tell her, did she get a sense of a disconnect? And the answer is she did. And so in this prelude to the polygraph, Agent Tammy Lee writes, with regard to when he first realized he wanted to separate from Shanann, he decided he wanted to separate from Shanann during the 5 weeks Shanann and the girls were in North Carolina. Now, the first time Watts actually brought the subject up wasn't that morning. It wasn't during a mythical conversation after sex. It was in North Carolina. And we know this because the phone data review shows this. It's in their texts. So there was really no reason to wake up early on Monday morning to discuss a separation or selling the house. They'd done so many times before. The reason there needed to be a discussion was so that Shanann would have a reason to leave the house that morning in a huff. In other words, that would leave Chris Watts off the hook. That would be the narrative he'd be able to tell. And that was why it was necessary for there not only to be a discussion that morning, as unlikely as it was given the fact that she came home so late, but a discussion about stuff they'd discussed previously then and there that Monday morning after Shanann had had like 2 hours sleep. And Shanann would have also wanted the kids to get enough sleep as well. She wouldn't want to wake them. So another reference is also from Tammy Lee, where she says, he and Shanann discussed over text where their relationship was going. And the fact that they did this means we've got absolute proof that it was discussed between Chris Watts and Shanann Watts. It's not just an allegation. It's not just Chris Watts saying this. It's not just Nicole Kessinger saying this. The fact that it was discussed over text means Shanann actually knew what her husband was thinking. But to some extent, she was keeping it a secret. She was certainly keeping it a secret from her own parents while they were in North Carolina. It goes on to say North Carolina was the first time he and Shanann ever discussed separating. And then goes on to say, like, if we're bringing our third kid into this world, like what's our relationship going to look like? Is it going to be, are we going to work this out, or is this going to lead to a separation? Is this going to lead to where, like, we stay together and be civil with the kids, or are we going to go our separate ways? Shanann was very emotional, and there was a lot of crying, and this was all in North Carolina. Her being emotional and crying was as a result of this talk about the separation. I think other people thought she was ill and it had something to do with the pregnancy. He told Shanann he didn't feel the same connection with her anymore, and that was the truth. But could she accept that? He didn't feel like he could be himself anymore, or the person Shanann needed him to be. And wasn't that true? He couldn't be the person Shanann needed him to be anymore. So what I want to sort of emphasize here is, if Chris Watts knew they were separating, did Shanann know that they were separating? And so we now go to another reference from the discovery, and where it says he wasn't aware if Shanann told anyone about the possible separation. Shanann's friends said they could tell her emotional state was different. And the answer is that she told some of her friends. I think she told Eddie Maloney and Christina Meacham while they were in North Carolina, while she was in North Carolina. And then I think she only led on a little bit later on when she was in Arizona to Cassie and Nicole. She kind of broadened, she explained a bit further to other friends what she was feeling and what was going on. So I think Shanann was in denial. Sometimes she seemed to come out of it and realize what was going on. She suspected the affair only to be sort of, only for her anxiety to push her back into denial. She was also in denial about the affair, as I say, but if you think about her social media, it was always about putting a happy face on everything, and even her friends who were also multi-level marketers were also about putting a happy face on everything. And so what is their advice to her? Oh, it'll all be okay, right? So think about it. Living beyond your means means when things aren't going well or looking very good, you continue to do what you've always done. You still put a nice, thrivey veneer on everything. How do you convince someone like that in the middle of a thriving pregnancy, in the middle of a thrive, well, I'm even going to go to a thrive event, that the fairy tale is over? How do you kind of get them to almost snap out of it? The habit is to wake up every day and tell everyone how great things are. How do you get someone's attention and get them to back down from showboating you and your family and even their own showboating when they do this every single day and have been doing this for weeks, months, and now I guess even years? The gender reveal was going to be another showboat as well. In the same way, Watts didn't broach the separation subject properly or timeously with Shanann, he did the same thing indirectly with his boss. Although he told law enforcement, he told his boss about the separation, in fact, he left it to his boss to infer that a separation might be going on. And I think the same thing happened with Shanann. And I think the same thing happened with Nicole Kessinger. Remember, he told, and this is according to the discovery, his supervisor, Luke Eppel, was the only one at work that knew he and his wife may get separated. That is apparently what Chris Watts told, I think, Agent Tammy Lee, that his boss was the only one that knew he was going to get separated. But he didn't tell his boss that. He basically just said, we're having issues, and if I go and stay somewhere else, and left it to his boss to put two and two together. Why do you think he behaves this way? Why do you think he doesn't, why isn't he more honest and more direct about what is actually going on? Is it because he's a lesser spotted covert narcissist, or because he's an introvert? So I just want to make a few more references to separation in the discovery. This is from page 599. Chris said he told her he was going to get separated from Shanann, but he didn't know what that was going to look like, right? And that is what he told Agent Tammy Lee, that what he told Kessinger. Then there's another reference, and it's what he said to his own father, shortly after kind of confessing, or in the sense that he confessed that his wife had killed the children. He basically said, Chris said, like, I didn't hear anything. When I was downstairs, I came back up and they were gone. I don't know, like me talking to her about that, talking to her about the separation and everything, about like, I don't know. And then Ronnie asked, did Shanann freak out over the separation as he was leaving for work? So if you look at this, Ronnie's not even surprised to hear they were separating, right? It's not news to Ronnie. So is it true that they were separating or not? Well, what happens when one part of the equation, of the couple equation, is in denial and the other part is kicking their heels, chomping at the bit, impatient to continue their affair and their relationship? So here's another reference. Ronnie asked if Shanann was upset over the separation or the affair. Watt said he believed Shanann thought he was having an affair. Watt said he kept denying the affair to Shanann. Chris said he had talked to Shanann prior about separating, but Shanann hoped they could go to counseling. What really needed to happen was Chris Watts needed to admit the affair and admit that that was the reason why he wanted a separation. That would have made it absolutely clear to Shanann what was really going on. Instead, he was trying to minimize the affair and hide the affair, and this is why Shanann couldn't understand what was going on. And I think she actually confused his unhappiness with her with Nutgate, thinking that was a problem they could probably deal with and get over. Anyway, now let's get back to Kessinger's take on the separation.
So I saw it.
Even though his family was in North Carolina for multiple weeks, it appeared that he was still living in the basement.
Mm-hmm. Well, and he told me sometimes he would like go upstairs and sleep if like he was home alone, because I know she'd like go on business trips and stuff. But he's like, I don't like that bed anyway, so he didn't really like sleep up there. I was like, okay. Even when it was just him. So
Okay.
that was the impression that I got. I don't know what you're talking about. North Carolina.
Go back to North Carolina.
So, North Carolina. So, he still made very frequent communication with me when he was out there. And at one point, he told me that they sat down and they talked about it. And he told her that he wanted to either fix things or like to try to fix things, and if she didn't want to fix them, then they needed to like move forward with the separation and like actually file for a divorce at this point was the impression that I got from this, and was what he told me. And so he said that she was like pretty receptive to just not trying. He was like, she seemed like she just wants me to go. He's like, when she has her mind made up, she has her mind made up, and that's what she wants. And he's like, she doesn't want to try anymore. And he's like, and neither do I really. And he was like, it's done. And he's like, and then the next day, I don't even know what days these were, sometime when he was out there, he told me we're putting the house up for sale as soon as we get back. And I was like, well, that was quick. And he was like, it's her. She's ready to go. And I was like, okay.
So Agent Kobach also took these notes. Chris Watts told Nicole Kessinger, according to what Kobach's written down, that Shanann was okay with their separation. That's the impression that Kessinger is given by Chris Watts. And obviously it suits Chris Watts to provide that impression. What is Kessinger going to think if it's a scenario of, well, she's not okay with the separation? And you'd imagine that if Kessinger knew that Shanann was pregnant, that she'd say, why would she be okay with the separation if she was pregnant? But you'd imagine that she'd be okay with the separation if she was pregnant either with someone else's child or if she simply wasn't aware of the pregnancy. But that is brought up here, that Shanann was okay with the separation. And Nicole found it concerning because she discussed with Chris trying to repair his relationship with Shanann prior to him leaving for North Carolina. Chris told Nicole that he had told Shanann he wanted to fix the relationship while in North Carolina, and Shanann said she did not want to try and wanted a divorce. Kessinger said she believed Chris was lying about Shanann saying she was okay with a divorce or separation. But I think that is something she realized only on the Monday night. She didn't think he was lying prior to that. And of course, how this often works is we look at all of this in with the benefit of hindsight, knowing the outcome, whereas you've actually got to look at it in the same chronology that they go through it. Sometimes you don't know something, later on you do know something, but from our perspective you think, oh, you knew that, you knew it all along. You don't think that the knowledge evolves over time, especially when someone is deceiving you. Does that make sense?
And so I left it at that, and then he got back, and I started asking him, like, what are you going to do? Because the Colorado housing market is fire, and you guys are going to sell this house, like, real fast. And I'm like, you need to start looking for a new place to live. And I'm like, where do you want to live? And I was really trying to help him out. I'm like, do you want to get a house? Do you want 3 bedrooms so you have one and each of your girls have one? I'm like, do you want to, you know, like do an apartment? Like, what do you want? You know, where do you want to live? Because he's in Frederick, but that whole area over there is just like a bunch of small towns, and you can kind of just pick and choose. Everything's kind of, you know, and so he told me, well, I like Brighton, and I was like, okay. And then he told me he wanted a 2-bedroom apartment, and he said he wanted 1 room for him and the other room for his 2 girls. And I thought it was kind of cute. Like, I remember telling him, I was like, yeah, me and my sister had bunk beds, like, at my dad's house. And I was like, when we were little girls, and me and my sister were the same age apart as him and as his 2 daughters, you know. So I told him, I was like, they're going to love it. I was like, they might be, like, stuck in one room together. I was like, but they'll become, like, best buddies. And it was really exciting. Like, I liked helping him, and I just wanted him to, like, I don't know. This is what he told me he wanted. So I was like, well, I will help you do the research. But another thing that I really took care of was to be like, where is she moving to? I was never like, you know what, screw your wife, try to get full custody. None of that bullshit. It was always just like, you know, I'd ask him, I'm like, well, what kind of custody are you guys going to have? Because he at work, they're about to switch his schedule. So right now he's like on Monday through Friday, and they're about to switch these guys to 8 days on, 6 days off.
That's tough.
That's awesome. And I was asking him, I was like, are you going to have your kids like on that set of days off? I was like, because that would work perfect, like 1 week on, 1 week off. And I was just like, you know, we just talk about it. And I'm like, what is your plan? And he's like, we haven't figured out exactly what we're going to do about the kids yet. But he told me, he's like, Colorado's a 50-50 state, and she's okay with everything 50-50. Like, he said that she was, like, on board with this because she wanted it too. Like, she was checked out of this relationship. So that was, like, how he made this sound. That it was, like, a very, like, kosher, we're done kind of thing.
Did you ever give him, like,
This video is getting quite long. It's almost 35 minutes now, but I want to leave you with a final thought. If Kessinger did actually see Shanann's posts on Facebook, implying that they were still a thriving family, what do you think she made of them? I mean, Shanann's posts right up until the day she died was showing Shanann happy, healthy, and the family happy and healthy. And so if you've been seeing that all along, that you are thriving, what do you think someone would make of that? Do you think someone would look at those posts as reality, as the true situation going on, bearing in mind there was also the reality of the first bankruptcy, and now there's kind of a second bankruptcy? Would you look at that saying, oh, this is the truth of what's really going on here, or would you look at that as kind of a show? And would you not tend to be dismissive of that? How much of the Facebook stuff would you take seriously? Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.